What is it about a true crime story that really grabs you? Beyond the shocking headline or just finding out what happened.
Yeah, why do we get so consumed by them, needing every single detail?
Exactly. Well, today we're actually doing a deep dive into true crime deep dives.
Meta.
Right. We've looked at a bunch of stuff for you. There's an expert curated list of binge-worthy ones, descriptions from places like Apple Podcasts and Spreaker, and some really interesting chats from an online community dedicated to this stuff.
Okay, so what's the plan?
Our mission today is basically to figure out what makes something a true crime deep dive. Why do they hook us so intensely? And we'll highlight some really compelling ones. Think of it as a shortcut to understanding this whole genre better.
Sounds good. Where do we start?
Let's start right at the definition. What actually turns a true crime story into a deep dive? It feels like that term is everywhere now.
It really is. And it's a good question. There are some pretty clear signs. If you look at this Podchaser list curated by Ami in Alabama, I think it was April 18th, 2025, she really nails the core idea for the, quote, best of the best true crime deep dives.
Okay, what did she say?
For her, they have to catch and hold your attention quickly. And crucially, they need to keep you invested so much that you binge the entire pod.
The binge factor. I get that. That need to just hear the next episode immediately.
Totally. But she also adds something interesting. Bonus points for truly empathetic investigative journalists with integrity.
Right. Integrity and empathy. What does that focus really add? How does it make these deep dives different?
Well, that's where you get the real substance, I think. It's not just a quick news hit or, a daily update that just skims the surface. These deep dives are usually multi-episode stories focusing on one single, really complex case. So the integrity and empathy, it's not just about, being nice. It signals a serious journalistic effort. It means they're doing the homework, the meticulous research, and they get the human cost involved.
So it's about building trust with the listener, too.
Exactly. You're giving your time and attention to someone dealing with really sensitive, often tragic stuff. You trust them to handle it carefully, responsibly. It's sort of a safe way to explore these darker truths.
That makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
And it definitely sets them apart from the more just shocking for shock's sake content you sometimes see.
That's on.
And, the Apple Podcasts description for their true crime deep dive channel kind of echoes this. They talk about wanting to unravel the intricate details behind real-life cases.
Right.
From breaking updates and shocking revelations to hidden motives and courtroom drama. And they specifically mention using in-depth analysis and expert interviews to leave no stone unturned in our quest for justice and truth.
That leave no stone unturned part is key, I think. It shows that commitment. And they also mention unraveling unsolved mysteries and dissecting high-profile trials.
So it shows the sheer breadth of topics these things can cover. It's not just one type of story.
Not at all. It goes way beyond just the initial crime report. They dig into every angle, every implication.
Okay, so this brings us back to you, the listener. Why are you drawn to these really immersive true crime stories? What's that hook, that aha moment that keeps you listening, sometimes for hours and hours?
It's interesting. Looking at the sources, there's a common theme. And it's not just for true crime, actually. People want information quickly, but they also want it to be thorough. They want different perspectives, but they don't want to feel totally overwhelmed with data.
Right. Avoiding that information overload.
Exactly. And these deep dives, the good ones anyway, they manage that balance. They give you summaries, but also those memorable details, those specific examples that stick with you.
So efficiency plus depth. Getting the whole story without doing all the digging yourself.
Pretty much. They often have a really clear structure, they're engagingly told, and they respect your time. But for true crime specifically, I think it hits something deeper.
Like what?
Well, maybe it's our natural desire for justice. Or, trying to understand the darker side of people, trying to find some order in the chaos.
There's definitely a puzzle-solving aspect to it.
For sure. And there's a certain safety in exploring these, let's face it, dangerous truths from a distance. You learn about behavior patterns or how the legal system works or doesn't work. It's about the why, not just the what.
And you mentioned the hosts earlier.
Yeah, a bit of personality definitely helps. It stops it feeling like just an audio textbook. Makes the whole thing more enjoyable, more memorable.
Okay, so we have a better handle on what a deep dive is and why we listen. How does this actually look in practice with stories hitting the headlines right now? Let's look at some recent examples.
Yeah, we can see this really clearly in that Apple Podcasts True Crime deep dive. Since it updates daily, it gives you that real-time feel for ongoing cases. Like the Diddy allegations, that was huge in October 2024. That deep dive really showed how the format tackles breaking news and carefully pieces together all the details as a situation unfolds, tracking all those serious accusations, the legal stuff.
Yeah, that's been a massive ongoing story. What about the Alex Murdaugh case? That one felt like it went on forever.
Oh, totally. And the deep dive on him, highlighted around October 16th, 2024, is a perfect example of chronicling a complete downfall.
From prominence to prison.
Exactly. It shows how the genre can unpack really complex financial crimes alongside murder charges. It follows the whole thing, from the initial crimes, through the trial, the conviction, even those later allegations about jury tampering.
And we've all been watching the Brian Koberger case develop too.
Right. Featured October 15th, 2024. That deep dive shows how these podcasts get into the really high-stakes legal fights, like the arguments over the death penalty in Idaho.
Dissecting the courtroom arguments, the legal precedents.
Yeah, all in real time. And if we go back just a bit further, the Delphi trial breakdown from August 11th, 2024.
What did that one show?
That really highlighted bringing in lots of different expert voices. They had insights from FBI folks, legal experts, psychological experts, giving you that full, rounded understanding of the trial's conclusion. It's about getting that deep analysis.
Okay, so that covers the very current headline-grabbing cases. But what about other deep dives, like the ones on Spreaker's True Crime Deep Dives? How do they peel back the layers on lives that maybe seemed ordinary on the surface, only to reveal these shocking secrets?
Ah, yeah. This is where the genre can get incredibly compelling, uncovering the totally unexpected. Take the Savannah Grace Morgan murder, detailed July 23rd, 2025.
What happened there?
Just brutal. An 18-year-old girl murdered by her mother and stepfather, her body found burned, and the motive. It came down to extreme religious beliefs, purity culture stuff, apparently triggered by a private video of Savannah shared without her consent.
Wow, so the deep dive explored that whole cultural context.
Exactly. It shows how the genre looks into these seemingly quiet communities and how these deeply held beliefs can just curdle into something horrific.
The layers of betrayal in some of these are just staggering.
Absolutely. Look at Snyder's Shadow, the Jace Hollowell murder from July 21st, 2025, a promising high school football player killed by his assistant coach.
Why?
The deep dive revealed the coach drugged and killed Jace to stop their relationship from getting out. It's a stark example of how these stories expose hidden lives and the desperate, awful things people do to keep secrets.
Then there's the Franklin betrayal. That title alone sounds like a thriller.
It really does. The Franklin betrayal, a teacher's tragic end. From July 11th, 2025. It's a gripping story. A beloved elementary teacher murdered.
Wow.
Involved her husband, who was a police sergeant, and his 19-year-old son.
No.
Yeah. And the deep dive uncovered this shocking twist. A hidden camera actually recorded the murder. And there were explicit messages revealing a secret sexual relationship between the husband and his son, with the son manipulating the father, just layer upon layer.
That's incredibly dark. And some of these cases go in completely unexpected directions, right? Even global.
They really do. The librarian, the lover, and the lies. Eunice Nana McRae, July 7, 2025. Starts with the murder of a 72-year-old librarian, seems like one kind of case.
All right.
But the investigation uncovered this horrifying human trafficking ring. Elderly white women being sold into sexual slavery in Japan, disguised as gray-only tours.
That is unbelievable.
It shows how a deep dive can start with one incident and unravel this massive, complex criminal operation, stuff you wouldn't even imagine.
And then there's the Dana Point horror, which sounds like it involves some really disturbing stuff.
Yeah, the Dana Point horror, an obsession unearthed from July 5, 2025. Brutal murders of a lesbian couple, Sienna Klass and Marla Jensen. Signs of ritualistic violence, burning, possible cannibalism.
Oh my God.
The investigation found a hidden bunker, shocking GoPro footage. It led to the conviction of a guy named Roman Delacroix, described as a post-human performance artist. It just shows how the genre confronts the absolute darkest extremes of obsession and violence following the evidence trail through truly chilling finds.
And finally, touching on a very modern kind of horror, the viral murder of Lily Moran from June 27th, 2025.
That one's tragic. The deep dive connected the death of a young adopted girl, Lily, to her adoptive parents' family vlogging YouTube channel.
Exploiting kids for clicks.
Essentially, yeah. Exposed the abuse behind this seemingly perfect online family image. Lily died from a cold medicine overdose, and it was her older sister, Jada, who secretly recorded footage that exposed the abuse. It really highlights how deep dives tackle crime intersecting with contemporary issues like online fame and child exploitation.
Okay, so we've seen the range from current trials to these complex hidden stories.
Yeah.
What does this all tell us about the listeners who are just devouring these podcasts? Let's look at those Reddit discussions you mentioned. People listening to over 20 hours of podcasts per week. What makes these specific deep dives stand out for them?
Well, it really comes back to that immersive, detailed experience we talked about.
Hmm.
And often it's the sheer quality of the investigation that hooks them. Like cold comes up a lot. People call it heartbreaking.
Hmm.
One listener even mentioned the man's singing is truly haunting, but it kind of lightens the mood a bit, which is interesting. They called it the best podcast. It clearly hits an emotional nerve while being incredibly detailed.
And it's not just emotion, right? It's the journalism quality, too, like what In the Dark season 2.
Absolutely. In the Dark season 2 gets praised for top quality journalism. I mean, the reporters literally moved to Winona, Mississippi to research the case.
Wow.
And they uncovered new information that no one had seen or heard of before. That kind of dedication, that's why some listeners say it's the best podcast I've ever heard. That real boots-on-the-ground investigation.
Another one that seems to be a huge favorite is Bear Brook. What's the magic there?
Bear Brook really sticks with people. One listener wished they could go back and listen again for the first time.
High praise.
It is. It's described as a wild story, initially seeming very disjointed, but then it all comes together just as it should be. It's that masterful storytelling, that slow burn reveal of a complex mystery that people love.
And for listeners who like watching a case actually develop while they're listening, your own backyard must be huge.
Definitely. Your Own Backyard is held up as a comparison for every other serialized podcast because the case was literally playing out in real time. Arrests were made during the podcast's run.
So listeners feel like they're part of the unfolding justice process.
Exactly. It's a unique, ongoing experience.
Okay, I've also heard True Crime Bullshit mentioned as being incredibly thorough. What makes it the deepest dive for fans?
Yeah, True Crime Bullshit gets called the deepest dive, mainly because it's so very well researched. And this is key. It includes actual interview audio with Keys, the serial killer Israel Keys.
Using primary source audio.
Right. That distinguishes it from shows that are more just hosts talking about a case. That raw audio adds a whole other level of intensity and authenticity.
Let's talk about an Australian one with a really unique situation. Teacher's Pet.
Oh yeah, Teacher's Pet. Listeners call it a crazy story that I'll never get to experience anything like it ever again. But the really fascinating part is its real-world impact.
What's that?
Apparently, it's currently unavailable in Australia. Why? Because the case it covers is about to be before the courts. And the consensus seems to be that the trial would not be happening at all if not for this podcast.
Wow, so the podcast directly led to legal action.
It seems that way. It's a powerful example of how these deep dives can actually influence the course of justice.
Okay, shifting gears a bit, what about Project Unabomber? That sounds like it goes beyond the usual murder mystery.
It does. Project Unabomber digs deep into the hunt for Ted Kaczynski, the Unabomber. It details the FBI's investigation, including this decades-long obsession with some kids who played Dungeons and Dragons in the 70s that turned out to be a red herring.
Interesting angle.
Yeah, and something listeners often point out is the revelation that it was all women who took down the Unabomber. It adds this whole other layer to a story many people think they know.
Now, a lot of people credit S-Town with getting them hooked on long-form podcasts. It wasn't strictly true crime, was it?
Not entirely. It's described as a raw journey of friendship. It starts out as true crime, briefly touches on true crime, but in the end, it's a raw journey of friendship.
So it transcended the genre.
Completely. It was that unexpected shift, the incredibly deep character study. That's what made it so memorable and impactful for so many. Showed the potential for these long-form narratives to explore humanity in really profound ways.
And what about Sweet Bobby? That one apparently caused jaws to drop.
Yeah, it's a catfish story. Even for listeners who feel like they've heard every catfish story out there, this one apparently still manages to shock.
So good storytelling wins out.
It really does. It shows the power of a well-told narrative, even when the crime is deception rather than violence.
Okay, lastly, let's touch on Hunting Warhead. Highly recommended, but with a content warning.
Yes, it's rated as so good in terms of quality and investigation. But, and this is important, the subject matter deals with child sex abuse imagery. So it's definitely not for everyone.
Right. It's a necessary reminder.
It is. It shows that even with journalistic integrity and empathy, these deep dives don't shy away from the absolute toughest, most disturbing aspects of crime. They confront uncomfortable truths.
Wow. Okay, that was a lot to get through. But it really paints a picture of the incredible depth and range of true crime deep dives available.
It really does. From those daily updates on current trials to these sprawling multi-season investigations that can totally change how we see past events, they offer such a unique view into how truth and justice are pursued.
Yeah, it highlights how that meticulous research, the expert interviews, the dedicated storytelling,
Yeah.
it all comes together to give you context and insight you just don't get from a quick headline.
Exactly. They really help you connect the dots, understand not just what happened, but maybe start to understand why it matters. You get that fuller, more informed perspective.
So as you're thinking about all these cases, these stories, and the immense effort that goes into telling them, maybe consider this. Beyond just the facts and the narratives unfolding, what is it about these true crime deep dives that genuinely sticks with you? How do they do more than just inform you? Do they maybe even subtly shape how you think about human nature or justice, or even just the power of asking questions and digging deeper? What stands out most to you about how these complex, often difficult stories are told?